It's things like that, even though it's a small amount of money, if it's $10 a month, that's $120 a year that you are wasting if you're not taking advantage of the service. So there's no point in paying for it if you're not using it.
Who's worried? Always been the one who's keeping it cool.
Hi loves, welcome back for another video, or welcome if you're new here. If you are new, make sure to hit that subscribe button right down below to see more videos from me in the future. Today I'm doing a Coffee with Cassie live chat advice kind of video. I actually have some tea this go around, some green tea, because I was not feeling a second cup of coffee today, which is weird for me, but you know, you just gotta go with what you're feeling. I do want to start this right off the bat with a disclaimer and just say that I am by no means a financial expert. I still have a lot to learn and kind of work through when it comes to my finances, but I do think that I've come really far in the last year or so, and so there are some things that I've learned that I want to share with you guys that I wish I would have known sooner in my young adult life. So I actually want to start this off with a couple of statistics. I was just reading the news on LinkedIn the other day, which I know, again, so adult, whatever. And a headline came up about people managing their finances, and it said that about 40% of adults said that if they were faced with an unexpected $400 expense, they would either not be able to pay it or would do so by selling something or borrowing money. And that's according to the Federal Reserve's report on the economic well-being of US households. So it's not like that was just made up. This is a very real statistic, and it's kind of insane because $400 is a decent chunk of money, but when you think about how much the average person makes a year, it's really not that much. And so it's really concerning that so many people aren't planning for their future and, you know, aren't ready for things that are just bound to come up, whether it's your car breaking down or maybe you're losing your job. You know, there's just like some things in life that you can't control, and not being prepared for these things is just really scary. And I used to be that person, and now I understand the importance of why you have to be ready for these kinds of things, and I will talk about that in this video. Another one that is kind of sobering is that less than 40% of non-retired adults think they are on track for saving for retirement. Yikes. And another 25% of people who participated in this same survey said that they have no retirement savings at all, which again is crazy, and I'll talk more about this later in the video, but you can't afford to not prepare for your future. It's a thing, and it's not like it's gonna go away if you ignore it and just tell yourself that you're going to plan later. So yeah, anyway, with those two things being said, I just kind of wanted to share that you're not alone if you feel like your finances and your money are a mess and you're not managing it as well as you could be. There are a lot of people out there who are probably worse off than you, and you know, it really is about kind of making those smaller changes that eventually kind of snowball into a bigger effect. So now I'm going to go more directly into my own story and my advice that I have for you guys from it. Without further ado, here is how I got my financial shit together. So for those of you guys who have watched my videos, you know that I am still fairly new to the adult world. I worked my first full-time job, like full year of it, in 2017. 2017 was a mess of a year for a lot of reasons, but I think since I had never worked full-time for that long, I'd never really had the opportunity to kind of manage that amount of income and just deal with the responsibility that comes along with that. So I definitely had a lot to learn, and boy did life decide that it was going to teach me. Budgeting had never been a thing that I was very good at. I had made some attempts to make some Excel spreadsheets and pretend that I was an adult who knew what she was doing, but none of that ever really stuck for me, and I think that was one of the problems that I had, especially earlier in 2017, because since I finally had an income where I felt more comfortable with where I was at and I was able to pay all my bills and stop leaning on my mom for some help, you know, to get by every month, I really felt like, oh, like I've got it covered, like, you know, I'm paying for everything, so like who cares? I don't really have to pay too close attention as long as I'm not spending too much, which I mean, it's good, but definitely was not as like solid of a plan as I really needed. So before I had this full-time job, I was working part-time throughout college, and then after I graduated, while I was kind of job searching and trying to figure out my life. and I supported myself as much as I could through the work that I was able to do, and I was kind of stubborn as well. And so I had a credit card and I used it probably more than I should for kind of bigger ticket expenses, and you know, when I knew I couldn't cover something in a given month but I needed to have it, I was kind of stubborn and wanted to be independent. And I was like, oh, I'll pay back these things, it's fine. And I just charged a lot more than I should, and definitely carried a balance more months than I didn't. And that was also an issue because I definitely didn't have a good relationship with my credit card and was using it a lot more than I should have been and just not being responsible about it. So that habit kind of continued on into even when I had a full-time income. I was just getting on my feet. I was still using and like kind of leaning on that credit to be able to still go out with my friends and shop and live this life that I couldn't necessarily fully afford, but I just thought that I should be kind of keeping up with the Joneses and just pushing through and spending more money than I had. And I never really was giving it a second thought. I was like, well, I'm working full time now, so I'll be able to pay it back, it's fine. And then came the breaking point, which I feel like every adult hits a situation like this at some point, and then they realize, hey, I should probably be paying more attention to what I'm doing with my money. For me, it was when I brought my car in for my yearly safety inspection here in Virginia, and I know a lot of other states, you have to have inspections for your car to be able to be registered in the state. So mine was up for its inspection, and I brought it into a local Honda dealer and they took a look, and I just had a lot of things that were kind of borderline or did not pass in my car. And so I had to have like the battery replaced, and I needed new brakes, and like just all of these things that are routine maintenance that you need to have for your car. Obviously things wear out after you use them for a while, but unfortunately it was this big snowball effect, and I ended up having about $800 of repairs that needed to be done for my car for it to pass. And I commute to work, I drive, so I couldn't not have the repairs done, because if I didn't have them done, then my car wouldn't pass inspection and I wouldn't be able to register it. So there definitely wasn't another option for me. And I was definitely scared, but I knew that I had to figure it out. So again, I just charged it and figured I'd figure it out later because I need my car. Now, within a few months of this, I realized that I was in way over my head, especially since I had traveled a bunch during the summer. I went to California for VidCon, and I had saved a lot for that, but not as much as I actually needed to, especially since my boyfriend and I ended up staying an extra day because we missed our flight. And so there was the charge to buy new tickets because they were more expensive than our old tickets, and we had to pay for hotel and more meals. And so all of that was still kind of something I was paying off, and then I added this huge charge from the repairs to my car, and things started kind of just growing because interest on credit cards, as I'm sure most of you know, is a very high rate. And so this is how they make their money, and everyone knows this, and yet so many of us still end up getting in trouble with it. So this was kind of the point where I realized when things like this happen, I don't want to be in a situation like this anymore. I don't want to be a slave to my credit cards, having to pay every month so much of my income towards things that already happened and that I should have been able to cover without needing these cards. So from this situation, I learned as much as ignorance is bliss, it is so important to plan ahead when it comes to your finances. And I am a totally different person now because of it. When it really comes down to it, money is a tool, and you can use it if you do it well to live the life that you want to live. And it doesn't mean that you have to go into debt or go crazy. It just means you have to be careful and plan ahead and calculate things and not do more than you can handle. And that's what it comes down to. And sometimes it sucks, and sometimes it means you can't always go on the trips that you want to go on or buy every single like piece of clothing that you want, but it's just part of life, and if you're smart about it, it really will pay off. So now I'm going on a year later from that mishap with my car and just kind of the mess that I had put myself in. Today I'm still in debt, but it's definitely a lot more under control, and I have a good padding of savings that if something like that were to happen again, I'd actually be able to cover it in cash, which is not something I've been able to say in my entire life. So it's definitely something I'm really proud of. So how did I get here? The first step that I took, because my debt was definitely the thing that was kind of at the front and center focus of my life and my finances. I had to pay those bills every month, and I knew that I wasn't really getting anywhere with my payments, and that something had to change. And so I really kind of fell headfirst into personal finance blogs and YouTube channels and all kinds of stuff, which sounds so nerdy, but they really taught me a lot. And I realized that there were other options for repaying my debt. And so I ended up going with a personal loan to consolidate all of my credit cards. I make it sound really dramatic. I had 2 credit cards that had a decent balance. And so instead of paying both of them back every month, I am now paying one loan with a much lower interest rate back. So I'm still paying back the money. It's not like the debt went away, but it definitely has made it so much more manageable for me, and I've been able to pay down the balance every month. And of course there is still interest, but it's definitely made everything much more manageable for me, and I've been able to shrink it down a lot more since I started. And if you guys also have some kind of credit debt, just know that there are other options out there, and you don't have to keep letting it snowball and just grow and be this really awful thing that you're making really small progress against every month. There's also balance transfer cards, which actually have 0% interest. So if it's a smaller amount and you know that you can pay it off within, say, a year or whatever the terms are for that 0% interest, it's a really good option. So definitely make sure that you're doing your research when it comes to any part of your finances and you're understanding the options that you do have, because you probably have better options out there than what you're currently using, and it can make such a huge difference for you. The second thing I did was I opened a separate savings account at a different bank from my checking account, which sounds really extra, but stay with me for a minute. The reason that I did this is I wanted to have a separate savings account for an emergency fund. If you've never heard of an emergency fund, the whole idea is that you work over time to save up 3 to 6 months of income, and basically money that you could fall back on if you need repairs for your car, like that's what happened to me, or you lose your job unexpectedly, or you have unexpected medical expenses that your insurance can't cover. You know, it's just those kinds of things that happen in everyday life, and having a separate savings account for that makes it not necessarily like unavailable, but I can't just instantly transfer it right into my checking account if I I don't know, want to buy a new bag or go on a trip. It's harder for me to make that transfer because it takes 1 or 2 days to go from one bank or the other. So as silly as it is, just that one step of removing that money, you know, and kind of making it a little harder to access makes it easier for me to leave it there in that account. And it's just kind of separate of the money that I use in my everyday life. It's just kind of the psychology of that has worked really well for me, and I've been able to build definitely not an entire emergency fund yet, but one that is at a solid number, and it's growing every month, and that's something that I'm proud of and feel a lot more comfortable with. Another step that I took was I closed my savings account at my original bank. They recently, I think that just this year actually, changed their rules for their accounts, and it's much easier to get hit with fees every month. And since I'd moved the majority of my savings to a different bank, I was getting hit with fees every single month because I was not hitting the minimum balance. And for me, that just didn't make sense. So I went ahead and closed that savings account, and it was actually pretty painless and just was like a 10-minute phone call where they just had to put me on hold while they kind of worked through the logistics of it. But it's just those little things that, you know, you keep putting off that actually will save you money in the long run, and it's totally worth it to take those steps. Another really adult step that I took for my finances is actually contributing to my 401k. And I am only 24, but eventually I do hope to retire, and I am slowly making progress towards saving for that, and it's definitely nothing crazy or nothing to write home about. I'm actually only contributing about 3% right now, but 3% is better than nothing, and it's honestly so easy to set up a retirement contribution. If you're working full-time, you pretty much just have to go see HR, or even, I don't think I even had to see HR. I just had to make an account, and then I just, you know, put in how much I wanted to contribute, and it started coming out the next paycheck, which was awesome. And even if you're not working full-time, there are also other options out there for saving for retirement, so that's also definitely worth researching. I'll have some things linked down below if you want to check them out. Another thing that I did that has done wonders for my finances is actually taking budgeting seriously, which again sounds silly, but it's harder than it seems to really stick to a budget. And what has worked for me is the app Mint. I cannot recommend Mint enough to you guys. I've talked about it multiple times on my channel because it's amazing. It's very visual, and it just makes it so easy to track all of your spending and all of your accounts accounts so you can put everything all in one place. So I have all of my bank accounts, both of my credit cards, my student loans. I even have my car on there, the value of my car, because that's one of my assets. And so really just getting a good look at your big picture of your finances and then being able to kind of dial down and look at all of your income that's coming in and all of the expenses that are going out. And wow, I'm really spending that much at Starbucks, you know, like all of those little details are really important to take into account when it comes to your finances. And after a few months of using Mint, you'll really kind of get into a good stride with it. So my camera just stopped recording and I kind of lost my train of thought, but basically Mint is a really awesome app and I can't recommend it enough. Or basically just finding whatever system works for you to really track your finances closer. I also set specific goals and I make sure that every month I'm working towards them as best I can. So right now my two main goals are to pay off my personal loan, which was my credit debt, and then also to build my emergency fund. So every month I'm contributing towards both of those to bring my debt down and my savings up, which are two great goals to have. I also have a much better relationship with my credit cards now, and I never charge anything that I know I can't pay back. I just straight up don't buy it because that's how money works and that's how you keep yourself out of trouble. So now I actually only spend my standard bills and things that I'm doing every single month, and then I'm actually getting rewards back for that. So I have a JetBlue card, for instance, and I'm able to use the points that I earn to fly home to visit my family, which is awesome. And I'm actually saving money that way. So if you're smart about it, credit cards can be great, but if you know that you're not good at managing money and you think you might kind of get yourself in trouble, it's not worth it to have one. You really should kind of wait until you feel like you can trust yourself to pay back the balance every month, because that is the only way you should be using credit cards. Another way that I have kept my finances in check is making sure that I never go to the store without a list. This is so important, especially like how people always talk about not going to the grocery store hungry. That's important, one, because you will buy all the food because it looks good, but also if you go to the grocery store with no plan, you're going to end up wandering around, not knowing what you're going to cook for dinner and just like buying all this stuff that's going to go bad before you even use it, and then you're wasting money and time and food, and those are all awful things. So definitely taking the time to plan what you're going to eat for the week is also really helpful, because then you can make a specific list to cater to those meals that you're helping to make, and then you don't waste food and you save money. Win-win. Going off of that, I also meal prep most weeks, so I'll try to cook some things in advance. One, that also saves me time, but two, it saves me money again because I'm only spending on the food that I need for those meals that I'm planning on making for the week. And I'm also saving money because I'm bringing lunch to work and I have dinner waiting for me at home, and so I'm not tempted to go out for lunch or to order takeout. And those are two things that it's so easy to do because the food just comes to you and it's already ready to go, but it also adds up very quickly, and it's nice to kind of do that for yourself and already have food ready to go as you're running out the door or as you get home from work and you're exhausted. Another step that I took that was really easy to do and really just took paying attention to where my money is going every month is I canceled subscriptions that I'm not using. So weirdly enough, I canceled Netflix, which I know sounds so crazy, but I honestly just don't really watch it and haven't been lately because there haven't been a lot of shows I've been super excited about, and I watch a lot of YouTube and spend time working on my own videos too. So yeah, I have canceled Netflix for now. I mean, I know it's only like $10 or $11 a month, but it was $10 or $11 a month that was going to something I wasn't even using, and I can always resume it whenever I feel like I want to start binge watching shows again. It's things like that, even though it's a small amount of money, if it's $10 a month, that's $120 a year that you are wasting if you're not taking advantage of the service. So there's no point in paying for it if you're not using it. And the last thing that I do to keep my finances in check is I make sure that I keep learning. I'm definitely going to have a bunch of links down below if you guys want to check them out, but I love reading personal finance blogs. I love the Financial Diet YouTube channel, which I've talked about multiple times before, but I think just kind of hearing perspectives from different people, even in my own life, when I go to dinner with friends, I'll end up talking about money, which is such an adult thing, but at the same time, it's such a weirdly taboo subject, and it really shouldn't be, because the more that we talk about it and we share how we manage things, we can really learn from each other and all kind of be better about it, and you won't feel like you're stuck in the dark and that no one else is going through the same things that you're going through. So I definitely think it's important to keep learning and just keep the conversation going. So a lot of the things that I just talked about can be hard to kind of do and like make yourself stay on top of, because they benefit your future self more than your current self. And we live in such an instant gratification society, and it's wonderful to be excited about the things that you can get right away. But unfortunately, saving for whatever goals that you have, it takes time. You're not going to have just oodles of money pouring all over you because you're ready to save for a trip. You know, it takes time, and you have to plan ahead for these things and figure out whatever you can save and how you can budget to maybe save a few extra dollars. But other than that, you really just have to kind of trust in your future self and know that your future self will thank you for the things that you're doing now, even if they are baby steps. Even if you're putting $5 in your savings account, if you do that every month, that's going to add up. That's $60 in a year. So it really is important to kind of take a step back and know that all of these kinds of steps are so important to do because they do add up over time. So I want to take a moment just to encourage you guys to make whatever baby steps you need to for your finances. If you want to open a new savings account for a goal that you have, or maybe make a phone call if you need to cancel a subscription or something, just take some kind of small step today that you can for your finances, even if it's downloading Mint and hooking up your accounts. Like, just do something, and then leave me a comment down below and tell me what it is, and we can all just encourage each other to do better. All right, I have to run off to work or I'm going to be late, and work is where I make my money, which is all I've been talking about all through this video, so that's pretty important, and I've got to go. But I really hope that you guys found this helpful and it wasn't too rambly. I have a feeling I'm gonna have a time editing it. So yeah, anyway, I love you guys so much. Please don't be afraid of your money. It's just a tool and you can do it, I promise. It takes time and it's okay if you make mistakes. We're human and it happens. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you want to check out my social media or anything like that, it'll be down below. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe down below if you're new, like I said at the beginning, and I'm gonna go to work now. Bye guys, see you next Friday.